Am I the asshole for punching my sister's boyfriend after I found out he was abusing her? Disclaimer, this is not my story time it was sent to me on Instagram. My poor sister is so dumb. And for that matter, so is the rest of my family. My parents are extremely Christian. My sister and I were raised to never interact with men. And if you were to date a man, it was because you were going to marry him. Do you see where I'm going with this? My sister is 22, by the way. She's never had a boyfriend and she's never even spoken to boys before. When she met her current boyfriend, he love bombed her in the first week. He was a perfect gentleman in front of my parents. He said he was Christian. He said that he loved animals and that he had a 9-to-5 job. Well, let me tell you, it's all lies. My sister stopped talking to us for some reason. Obviously, this made me extremely suspicious, so I started going over to his place when she did. That's when I found out that he was pretty much home all day. All day. Sitting on his couch watching movies. What do you think my sister was doing? She would do his laundry, clean his kitchen, cook for him, take care of his dogs. The worst part is I found bruises on her neck and her arms. And when I did, she broke down and told me the truth. He got fired from his job and took it out on her. She said he locked her in his closet for 3 hours and hit her. And the worst part is, my parents told me to mind my business. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for punching my sister's boyfriend after I found out he was abusing her? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. When I told my parents that my sister had bruises on her neck and her arms, they told me to stay out of it. Essentially, I needed to mind my own business. I could not believe the words that were coming out of my father's mouth. When I looked at my mother, she had tears in her eyes. And that's when I asked them both, as your daughters, do you think that we deserve to get abused? And of course, they said no. This is when my sister's boyfriend started insisting that she move in with him. I did my hardest to convince her how to. Short of tying her and keeping her in our house, there was nothing I could do. That's when I see my sister walking out of my house with her bags, only to move in with her abuser. Can you guys put yourself in my shoes? I was trembling with anger. I went to her and I got down on my knees and begged her not to leave, but she still walked out with tears in her eyes. I could tell she didn't want to move out. I didn't see my sister for another 2 weeks. She finally came over, and when she did, I interrogated her and literally recorded it. She told me that he wasn't abusing her as badly. He was only checking her phone and only letting her eat at certain times of the day, but at least he wasn't hitting her. And she told me the worst news of all. Proposed, pressured her into saying yes. My parents were happy. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for punching my sister's boyfriend after I found out he was abusing her? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Not only is my sister now engaged to her abuser, my parents are happy about it. My parents know that they've already done it, so essentially, she has to marry him. At first, I thought the same, but the more I think about it, just because my sister did it with this man, why does she have to marry him? The abuse is abuse. There's no justification for it. I had to do something about it. I was at my wit's end. Picture this happening to your sister. What would you do? Found his mother on Facebook and went to visit her with my mom. I needed my mom to join me on this. The fact that she would just cry about it and not do anything pissed me off more than anything in my life. We showed up under the pretext that we wanted to have lunch with her. And to my surprise, his family is extremely wealthy. They lived in a great neighborhood, and their house was the biggest on the block. And she also had an amazing spread for us, with caviar and champagne. My mom and I were stunned. I mean, her son doesn't look like the type to come from a rich family. He has a shitty apartment and no job. His mom told us all the tea. She hadn't spoken to him in over 3 years. He had slapped her before, and they stopped giving him money. So all the times that he said he was employed, it was his parents giving him money. His mom told us that we needed to get my sister away from him. And that's what we did. Part 4 is up. Am I the asshole for punching my sister's boyfriend after I found out he was abusing her? Once I found out from his own mother that he had abused her, my mom and I knew that we needed to get her away from him. We went straight to their apartment. And at first, we could hear him telling my sister not to open the door. After 10 minutes of my mother and I begging, my sister finally opens the door. All I did was grab her and pull her out the door. When her boyfriend came at me, I punched him as hard as I could. And he didn't come after us. A few days later, his own mother sent my sister $20,000 to cover the cost of the lawyers. My sister got a restraining order. My mom kicked my dad out of the house, and the 3 of us live in peace now. I'm taking them to Europe for the summer. Would you have done the same? Did I break up with my girlfriend for sending her nudes to my brother? Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's on my Instagram. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and my brother is 23. We have always had a really good relationship. We're really close. We play sports together. We just spend a lot of time together in general. My girlfriend and I have only known each other for a year. We started dating 2 months later, so we've been together for about 7 to 8 months. To be honest, I don't exactly know how long. Am I the perfect man? No. Are we the perfect couple? No. But you know what? I put a lot of effort into our relationship. For example, she gets really bad mood swings when she has her period. So I always make the effort to go buy her groceries. I fill up her car with gas. And on her first day of her period, I always go over to her apartment and make her a nice meal. And I always buy her favorite vegan cupcakes from Whole Foods. Sure, I always forget about our anniversary and stuff like that, but it's the big things that count, you know? So my girlfriend always jokes about how cute my brother is. I mean, is he really cute? I don't know. He's just my brother. She'll go out of her way to make comments about him. Now, I'm not a jealous guy, so I never really say anything. She did make a comment in front of my brother and it made him uncomfortable. So afterwards, I asked her not to say those things in front of my brother. And if you must know, go to part 2 to see what she said about my brother. Break up with my girlfriend for sending her nudes to my brother. Disclaimer isn't on my story time. It's on Instagram. While we're sitting at dinner with my parents, she says, "Your brother is hot AF." My brother looks up from his dinner plate and just stares at me. My mom laughed awkwardly, and my dad literally didn't know what she was talking about. I could see how uncomfortable it made my brother. So after the dinner, I asked my girlfriend to not make any comments about how good looking my brother is. But then her weird obsession with my brother just got worse. He and I are both really into fitness and usually go to the gym together. And she started coming to the gym with us. Except she would follow my brother around like a lost puppy at the gym. Again, my brother would just turn to look at me and be like, "Can you come grab her?" So I physically had to pull her away from my brother. After a couple of times of us going to the gym and this happening, I sat her down and told her that she really needed to stop this time. Honestly, at this point, I found it kind of funny. My girlfriend's also really funny, so she makes everything into a joke. So honestly, I didn't assume anything terrible about it. Not until a few weeks ago when everything went down. Brother started dating a new girl. He showed my girlfriend a picture of her. My girlfriend immediately started judging her by her looks. She pretty much said she was ugly and that she had really bad skin, and that my brother could do a lot better. Part 3 is did I break up with my girlfriend for sending her nudes to my brother? Disclaimer is not my story time. I sent them on Instagram. After my girlfriend started ripping into my brother's new girlfriend, I put my foot down and told her that she needed to stop immediately. My brother was clearly uncomfortable, and still she thought it was all a funny joke. As I drove her home, I asked her why she had to do that. She went on a rant about how hot my brother was and how ugly his new girlfriend was. And again, she started criticizing everything about her physically. Said her hair was dry, that she had too many pimples, that she was shaped like a little boy. That's when I told her that she didn't need to say everything she thought. Once I dropped her off at her place, I decided to go to the gym. 5 seconds after stepping into the gym, my brother sends me a screenshot of 2 nudes my girlfriend sent him. Call my brother and he says, "Dude, WTF." Then I call my girlfriend and she says, "What's up?" Enter the screenshot and she said, "Oh my god, I must have sent that by mistake. I'm so sorry." And I said, "Why would you send that by mistake?" She came up with this whole story about how she was actually trying to send them to me. And she sent me a screenshot of her messages. And she said that she probably just clicked on his by mistake. I don't believe it. I basically ghosted her for an entire week. My brother's still pretty pissed off. She's begging me to come back to her, but I don't know what to do. Could she be telling the truth? Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. I'm 24 years old and my boyfriend is 21. According to him, he has never been with any girl who's had cellulite before, or even an ounce of body fat. Yes, I know what you're thinking. He's a total asshole, which in that sense he is. But the rest of the time he's completely fine and actually sweet. We met last year at a friend's party. At the party, I instantly fell in love with him. I thought he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. And it was reciprocated. I saw him from across the room and he made eye contact. A few minutes later, he walked over to me and just struck up a conversation. I know that people present themselves the way they want to be seen, especially when they're trying to impress someone they're attracted to. He started telling me about how he's studying to be a doctor, how he volunteers at animal shelters, and that every single weekend he also volunteers at the soup kitchen. Everything he said was absolutely perfect. By the end of the night, he had asked me out on a date and I said yes. I did explain to him that I didn't want anything serious and he said that was totally fine. I was trying to focus on my studies, so having a boyfriend was not in my plans. But after we went on 7 dates, he asked me to be his girlfriend. He wouldn't take no for an answer. After about a month, I finally said yes. Mind you, at this point, he hadn't seen me naked, not even in a bathing suit. The very night that I said yes to being his girlfriend, he asked me to come over to his place. He made a whole gourmet dinner, even bought super expensive wine. So we ended up doing it for the first time that night. The next morning when I woke up, the first thing he said to me was, "Do you ever exercise?" I was shocked. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimers are not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. That's when he said point blank, super serious, "Do you ever exercise?" I just stared at him. I had literally just woken up in his bed after the first time we ever did it. Then I thought he must be joking. So I started to laugh a little, and then he says, "No, seriously, do you ever exercise?" I said, "Sometimes." Then he told me, "You should really try to work out at least 5 times a week." I went home and finally texted him saying that I wasn't comfortable with the way he spoke to me. That's when he said that what he said to me was completely normal, and that I shouldn't be offended. This was all in text, by the way. That's when he sends me another text message saying, "You know, you wouldn't have as much cellulite as you do if you didn't eat so much fast food. And if you exercise 5 times a week like I told you." I didn't reply to him for the rest of the day. Later that day, he shows up to my apartment and says, "You know, I should feel comfortable enough to tell you what I think about you." He somehow ended up making me feel bad and I ended up apologizing. Obviously, after that, I became really self-conscious about my cellulite and my entire body. So anytime we were together, I would always stay under the covers. By the way, my boyfriend doesn't have a great body. He's super soft and pudgy. Last week, he told me that he had abs though. Part 3 is a story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer, it's not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. One day, he pulls up his shirt and says, "Look, I have abs." Which, no, he doesn't. He's super soft and has a thick layer of fat on it. I smirked and he said, "What?" And I said, "You don't have abs." Then he says, "Yes, I do. I'm in better shape than you." By the way, he said this in front of his friends, so I was super embarrassed and stayed quiet the entire day. He finally went to drop me off and I was so happy to be home. But he decided to come upstairs with me. Got straight into my PJs. And when I came out of my bedroom, he says, "Wow, your cellulite's getting worse by the day." That's when I finally broke. I turned around and started yelling at him. I told him he had no right to talk about my body the way that he did, and that all he does is objectify me. He started laughing and said, "Wow, those are big words." And that when we met, he thought that I was in better shape. My clothes obviously tricked him. I'm 5'4" and I weigh 130 pounds. I am by no means fat, but the way way that he was bullying me was making me think that I was. That's when I told him that he was the fat one and that he had a big, huge beer belly. I also told him that his face was super round, but that didn't bother me. Oh yeah, and that his hairy back was gross. Then he said, wow, I can't believe you're attacking my physical appearance. Then he stormed out of my apartment, and as soon as he left, I felt happy. We haven't spoken in 4 days. I'm afraid that if he asks me to get back with him, I will. But I should just break up with him, right? What should I do? Storytime about how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram account, not knowing it was really me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, was sending me on Instagram. The funny thing is that when my boyfriend and I got together, I did not want the relationship. He begged me for 6 months to be his girlfriend. And you see, the only reason why I didn't want to was because I knew that he was a player. Every single one of my friends had basically gone out with him. I was just the last girl in the group to go out with him because I always kept saying no. And looking back, he was definitely obsessed with me because I never gave in to him. I was the girl that he couldn't have. During those 6 months, he would hit me up on Instagram every single day. Anytime I posted a story, he would automatically reply to it. He would like and comment on all of my pictures. We also had a lot of mutual friends, so we would end up at the same events and parties. And every time that he would see me in public, he would zero in on me. He would basically ignore all the other girls at the party and make me feel like I was the only one there. And he would constantly compliment me and tell me how beautiful I was, how attracted to me he was, how I was just so different from all the other girls that he had gone out with. Trust me, I knew that he was love bombing me, but eventually after 6 months, I was like, he's gotta be honest. So I decided to give him a chance. And let me tell you, he has been the perfect boyfriend. He's so sweet and considerate. My parents absolutely adore him. And my mom never likes anybody. See, I come from a Latino family. One day I decided to make a second Instagram account. It was just an inspiration account. I posted cute outfits of other people I liked, makeup, nails. Still one day I see my boyfriend in my DMs. Part 2 is of how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram and not knowing it was actually me. Disclaimers to know my story time was sending me on Instagram. That's when I opened up my account to see that my boyfriend had DM'd me. First I thought he was joking. When I clicked into the message and I read it, my heart and my stomach sank. He was taking a shot. He thought that I was some sort of influencer. Now when I created the second account, I was already with him. But I really didn't tell him that I was creating it. It was just for fun for myself. I did start gaining followers. I did put in a lot of work into this account, but it was pretty much a visual diary just for me. It just so happens that other girls liked the aesthetic and I started gaining a lot of followers. I had about 10,000. But here's my theory. Since my account is probably listed to be in the area that he is, probably popped up on one of his mutual lists or his explore page or something like that, because I was trying to figure out how he found the account. The message read, "Hey beautiful, I really love your pictures and love your style. I'm also really into fashion. Lol, no he's not. And I would love to take you out on a date. I know all the good spots around the city. Let me know if you're down." So when I clicked on my boyfriend's profile and realized that he had hidden all of the pictures we had together. So if he had DM'd any girl and she went to look at his profile, she would automatically assume that he's single because he doesn't have a picture of another girl. Instead of freaking out and calling him, I decided to keep cool. Instead, I called my mom. She told me to play along with the conversation. So that's what I did. Messaged him back and said, "Wow, I really love your pictures and your style too. What's your favorite designer?" He replied, "Louis Vuitton." Ew. By the end of the conversation, we had a date for that night. And I showed up. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram account, not knowing it was me. Disclaimer is not my story time, was sending me on Instagram. At the end of the conversation he thought he was having with some other girl, we had decided to go on a date. And like I said, I was playing along, so I was super nice to him. I complimented all the clothes that he wore. I told him that he looked so attractive in his pictures and that I was really looking forward to meeting him. Chose a restaurant downtown. And of course he did, because I live nowhere near that area. In fact, he and I never go out on dates there. So he knew that he wouldn't see anybody he knew. Here's where it gets actually really funny. This man sent a picture of the outfit he wanted to wear. A brown fedora with the Louis Vuitton monogram on it, a Louis Vuitton belt, black pants, and a black shirt. So I replied saying, "That's perfect. I'll wear a black dress and my favorite Louis Vuitton purse." But I was still heartbroken. Here's what I did. I asked my mom to come with me to the restaurant. Her and I did our makeup, our hair, and we got dressed up really, really nice. And I decided to wear a black dress. My mom actually happened to have an old Louis Vuitton purse in her closet that she never wore, so I grabbed it. My mom and I show up to the restaurant and my boyfriend is already there. So I decided to walk in and turn around, so that way he could only see my back. My mom decided to stay outside of the restaurant, but she knew to come in as soon as he saw me. I suddenly feel a tap on my shoulder and that's when I turn around. He says, "Oh, hey babe, what are you doing here?" The look on this man's face was of pure fear. That's when I hand him my phone so that he could see that the account that he was messaging was actually mine. That's when he says, "You lied to me?" He was mad at me for pretending to be somebody else. Then he started apologizing, and then he said that he knew the whole time and that he was just joking around. I broke up with him and haven't spoken to him since. Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? His best friend is a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's not on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We actually met a couple of months ago on a dating app. We went on several dates over the course of 4 months, and after that he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. While we were dating, I met a couple of his friends, one of them being his girl best friend, and she is bi, which I did know of. Okay, but here's the messed up thing. The day I met this girl, she was staring at me. Not just like staring at me a little bit, hardcore staring. She even told my boyfriend that I was so attractive that he needed to take care of me because she could snatch me up. And she said this in front of me. My boyfriend thought it was hilarious and just laughed at her. And to be honest with you, even though yes, she's a girl, she made me feel extremely uncomfortable. She would always compliment my body in front of everybody. She would comment on how my boobs are so big. We all went to the beach one time and she said, I quote, "If your bikini top pops off, I don't mind, girl." I did not laugh. She even went up behind me and tried to untie my bikini. My boyfriend thought it was so funny. Part 2 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's on me on Instagram. When she tried to untie my bikini top, I got really upset. I yelled at her, but my boyfriend thought it was funny. When my boyfriend and I got back to his apartment, I told him that his best friend made me really uncomfortable. And he said, "You're being so stupid. She's just a girl." I said that didn't matter because she always made comments about my physical appearance and how she was going to steal me from him. He promised he would talk to her and tell her to lay off. But this did the exact opposite. The next day, I get a DM from her saying, "So I heard I make you feel uncomfortable?" I didn't respond to that and I showed it to my boyfriend. My boyfriend just said, "Don't worry about it, just ignore her." Then she sent another message saying, "I'm sorry if I intimidate you." I was so upset that I replied saying, "You definitely don't intimidate me. You constantly objectify me and that's completely unacceptable." Then she sent me a poop emoji. And that was it. The next time I saw her, I purposely did not even look her way. This was at a party and there were tons of people, but she managed to follow me around the whole night and asked me why I wasn't talking to her. Finally, she grabbed me and kissed me. Part 3 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimers to my story time is on Instagram. During the party, she just kept following me around. She would ask me over and over why I wasn't talking to her, but of course I just kept ignoring her. I finally went over to the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when she grabbed me, turns me around, and just puts her face on mine. She stuck her tongue all the way down my throat. It was disgusting. And she had a really strong hold on me, so I couldn't push her off right away. To tell you that we struggled is an understatement. And I finally got her off of my face after like 30 seconds. I pushed her so hard she fell backwards. And I ran straight to my boyfriend and told him what happened. Thankfully, he was really upset with her and went straight to talk to her. Honestly, part of me thought that he was just going to take her side. We both went to the kitchen and he asked her what her problem was. That's when she told my boyfriend that she was convinced that I liked her and that for some reason I was just denying it because I wanted to play hard. By the way, she did have a few drinks, so I guess it could be that. I told her that she was actually hallucinating and that I did not have feelings for her. I also told her not to ever touch me again. My boyfriend told her not to come around anymore, but it doesn't stop there. He actually tried to kiss me again later on. Part 4 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimers are not my story time. It's not even on Instagram. She promised she wouldn't try to kiss me again, but she lied. Just a few days later, my boyfriend had forgiven her. She made up a whole story to him that she was depressed about another girl and that somehow I reminded her of the other girl. Then my boyfriend said, "Do you mind if she comes over?" And I told him as long as she didn't try to touch me, everything would be fine. This time I was going to defend myself. Do you see where this is going? A few of my boyfriend's friends showed up and then she showed up last. And as soon as she saw me, she came over and tried to hug me. I told her hugging was not necessary for an apology, that her words were fine. She then apologizes. Not 2 hours later, while everyone is in the backyard, I go to the kitchen. And she follows me again. This time she kissed me, but it was much quicker and I didn't have to push her off. Then she said, "What, are you gonna run and tell your boyfriend again?" Instead, I smacked her. Really, really hard. So hard, you could see my palm print on her face. Then she apologized and begged me not to tell my boyfriend. He's afraid of losing his friendship. And I actually did feel bad for her for a second, but I'm not sure anymore. Should I tell my boyfriend or should I keep this to myself? Bye. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimers is not my story time. It's on me on Instagram. The bitch that used to be my best friend, yeah, she's the worst person in the entire world. By the time I met her, my boyfriend and I had already been going out for 6 months. I met her through some friends and her and I got along really well. She was wild and crazy and she brought that wild and crazy side out of me. And at the time it was something that I did need, but I didn't realize just how wild she was. Let me tell you what this girl was like. She was the type of girl that would try to bring up sex in every conversation. Like no matter who we were talking to, she would always bring up sex. She would always try to impress everyone about how much she knew about it and how much she needed sex all the time. And sometimes I would ask her to not talk about it so much, and her response to that was, "Stop being such a prudy, bitch." My boyfriend and I decided to have all our friends over at my apartment for dinner. Since I had just met her, I decided to invite her over. This was the first time she was meeting my boyfriend and all of my friends. And of course, she proceeded to monopolize the entire conversation all night, and all she talked about was sex. Then she went to the bathroom and took off her jacket. She came out in her bra and shorts. Part 2 is Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she came out of the bathroom in her bra and a pair of shorts. Mind you, we have a bunch of our friends over having dinner at my place. I get up from the table and I ask her what's up. That's when she says that it's way too hot in my apartment and that I needed to turn down the temperature. I told her I'd give her a t-shirt if she wanted to and she said no. I'm comfortable in my body and I don't care if people look at me. When I look around, I see everyone staring at her. Obviously, all the guys are like oogling her goodies, but all the girls that are there with their guys are instantly upset. That's when my boyfriend bursts out laughing and says, "What's wrong with her?" She just starts laughing maniacally at what my boyfriend said. Then she goes and sits down next to my boyfriend and starts joking with him. You might be thinking I'm so stupid for this, but I decided to let it go. Oh yeah, she's also the type of person that never wants to go home. That's when I had to be honest with her and I told her that she was making everyone uncomfortable. And I asked her to leave, which she did. A few days later, she comes over to my place so that we can get ready to go out. My boyfriend was gonna go out with his friends and I was gonna go out with her. 2 seconds after she comes into my apartment, she walks out of the bathroom completely naked. And my boyfriend's just sitting there on the couch watching her. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she comes out completely naked. You could see everything. Boobs, butt, and V. And my boyfriend is sitting on the couch. As she comes out of the bathroom, his jaw drops to the floor. Then she says to me, "Oh my god, I couldn't find a towel, sorry." She walks straight into the guest bedroom where she has her clothes. My boyfriend and I look at each other and I'm completely disgusted. He, on the other hand, thought it was hilarious, so he starts laughing. Then she comes out of the guest bedroom in panties and a bra. I mean, I guess at least she wasn't naked this time. That's when I tell her, "Do you need help getting dressed or something?" She says, "Oh no, girl, I'm just thirsty. I'm gonna get something to drink." So I said to her, "I'll get you something to drink. You can go get dressed." At this point, I had it. But guess what? This wasn't the last time. A few weeks later, I wanted to go to her place to get ready this time. But then she insisted on coming over to mine instead. That's when I got the feeling that she had done all of that to get my boyfriend's attention. And I straight up told her, "Are you just walking around naked at my place just because you want my boyfriend to see you?" Of course, she denied it. She says, "He's cute, but he's not that cute." What? Part 4 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. At this point, she had been naked in front of my boyfriend twice, but it wasn't the last time. She came over to pick me up one time and I told her to wait for me downstairs. Well, instead of waiting for me downstairs, she decided to come up to my apartment. While I was in the bedroom changing, my boyfriend let her in. That's when she comes straight into my bedroom without even knocking and says, "Hey girl, do you have a dress I can wear?" The dress she was wearing was absolutely perfect. I asked her why and she said that she didn't feel sexy enough. Without even me saying yes, she started raiding my closet. Then she pulls out a very expensive dress I had not even put on yet. My boyfriend was standing in the doorway just watching the whole thing go down. I look at my boyfriend and he just rolls his eyes at me. Then out of nowhere, she takes off her dress and she's completely naked underneath. She looks at my boyfriend and says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there." My boyfriend turned around and walked away. I finally closed the door and confronted her about it. She told me that I'm a prude and that I needed to relax. I kicked her out and we haven't spoken since. She's been begging to talk to me and hang out. My boyfriend told me that if I felt uncomfortable around her, then for her not to come over. But he says that he's fine with her. His reaction also upset me too. What should I do? Story time about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. I'm 25 years old, and my mom just turned 40. She was 15 years old when she had me, so she was a really young mom. So obviously when my mom and dad were teenagers, they got pregnant with me. My mom hadn't even graduated from high school when she had me. My dad at the time, though, was in college, so he was a lot older than her. Obviously, looking back at their relationship, I think it was totally inappropriate. I've never said this to my dad, but I'm definitely open about it with my mom. Luckily, my grandparents stepped in and helped them financially. So I grew up in a really nice house going to a good school. The problem is that my parents basically had to do whatever my grandparents wanted them to. So my dad really hated my mom's parents. When I turned 13, my parents got divorced. My dad basically told my mom that he did not want to be in this relationship anymore. He was sick of her parents and that he didn't even want to live in the city we were living in. This was really hard for me, but it was even harder for my mom. She was left alone raising me while my dad went and partied. He was reliving his youth again, but this time the way he wanted it to be. I truly believe this, but my mom denies it. I think she started harboring resent for me. The fact that she had to stay home with me and take care of me. She wanted to go out with guys and drink and party, but I was always in the way. Part 2 is story time about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. I knew my mom resented me for having to take care of me instead of being able to go out with her friends and date men. When I turned 15, things started getting really difficult between me and my mom. My dad went off to New York, completely abandoned me and my mom, and went to live his dream. He wanted to be an actor, and he actually started getting successful at it. The good thing is, he started sending my mom a lot of money. This meant my grandparents weren't having to pay for everything, and it allowed my mom financial freedom from them, which meant she could do whatever she wanted. So instead of staying home with me, my mom decided to start going out. This actually made me really happy. This allowed us to have some space from each other, and she was able to go and have fun. Our relationship got a lot better because my mom was just happier. She even got a new boyfriend. My grandparents hated it, but she was so much happier. Fast forward 10 years later. My mom and I are very close and we still live together. 2 weeks before my 25th birthday, my boyfriend broke up with me. I caught him cheating on me with my best friend, which is a whole other story time, so if you guys want to hear that one, let me know. By the way, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My mom just started dating a new guy. This new guy was my age. Every time he would come over to be with my mom, he and I would just stare at each other. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. Every time my mom's boyfriend would come over to visit her, he and I would just stare at each other. Like I said, he was my age, and he and I got along really well. Now, nothing happened, and it's not like I was trying to do anything. My mom would talk about him all the time, and I would tell her how happy I was for her, because I really was. But before you jump into the comments to criticize me, remember that my boyfriend had just broken up with me because I caught him cheating with my best friend. It was a struggle to get out of bed every single day. I thought I was gonna marry this man. My mom had an upcoming work trip, and I knew that I was gonna be alone. I told her that I was afraid of being alone, and she said, well, I can have my boyfriend come over and take you out to dinner one day. I said sure, obviously not thinking anything would ever come of it. So one day he asked me if I wanted to go to dinner and I said yes. We were at dinner for like 4 hours and it felt like a first date. We talked about so much stuff and we had so much in common. We ended up having too many drinks and we both got a little drunk. And when we got in his car, we started making out. Then we went to my house and made out some more. And then we did the dirty. This only happened 2 days ago. Let me clarify, I don't want him. I want him to be with my mom. But now he's telling me that he wants to be with me and my mom. He's asking me to basically not tell my mom that we're hooking up and wants to stay with her. What should I do? My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's send me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. When her and I went to lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me and that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing. But at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid and that she was not going to walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her. And that's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch. That I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time. And my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do?